Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Paul Kudlow, and today I'm going to be telling you a little bit about TrendMD, and at a high level what you can think of us as an audience development tool for scholarly publishers. And despite our name being the MD, and despite me being a doctor by background, we serve all scholarly publishers, so both in the STM as well as kind of non-STM worlds. So before I get into the what we do and how we do, I want to talk about why we do what we do at TrendMD. And for me, it started off as a very personal journal or journey where in the beginning, this going back about 3 years ago, I was a medical student. I'd published my first paper. I was really excited. And then I went to my supervisor and he looked at me kind of dead-eyed and he was just like, yeah, whatever, Paul, just publish more. In order to make impact, you really got to publish a lot. There's a lot of papers published every day. So instead of causing kind of an existential crisis, it started an obsession about this problem of information overload in scholarly literature. And I came up from this from the vantage point of a reader, but the reality is that this is also a publisher problem in the sense that in this age of so much content being produced, how do publishers find the audience that they're looking for? And it sets up all sorts of problems. So if you think about impact submissions and revenue generation from a publisher perspective, the precursor to all of that is readership and targeted readership, so finding your key audience. And without that, it's difficult for publishers to maintain their ability to compete. So our idealized version of the future is to have this kind of seamless integration between the people that make content and the people that consume content. And in the middle is you have this kind of system, almost like an AI system that connects the dots, connects readers to the right content that they should be consuming. Now the problem though is that there's of course obstacles in our way. And one of the biggest obstacles, and speaking of this discussion, is that content is often trapped within journals. And that's a continuous theme where readers are everywhere. And in fact, readers just go to Google Scholar and they come to the journal and then they leave. And this is a problem. So how do you get your content out there? And the second problem is more subtle, which is the difference between search and discovery. So search is really good when you know what you're looking for, but most times scholars don't know what they're looking for, and that's the whole purpose of science. It's kind of driving that serendipity. So the question is, how do you push content to people that they don't know what they're necessarily looking for? So what we've done, and the way that we've kind of tackled this, is we have an article recommendations widget that's embedded on different places that researchers and scholars use on a day-to-day basis. So this is an example here on the BMJ. So we present basically anywhere between 8 to 10 links to other articles both within that journal as well as to other journals and other content providers. So it's almost like a mini aggregator experience on your journals. Now, what people often look at, they're like, why would I ever show third-party content on my own site? It doesn't make any sense. Well, the reality is that with TrendMD, you're actually getting visitors back in return. We have something called a credit system. So when clicks occur on one of those third-party links and someone goes somewhere else, you get someone back. And again, you're helping the reader journey. You're giving them reasons to find other content that you may not have. And when you think about that as a journey, this is just as an example here where you can again get your content discovered on other places. So in terms of TrendMD's use, we're now in use by over 3,600 different journals and over 300 publishers. So the network has grown very, very quickly. We're generating over 500 million recommendations per month, so over 500 million recommended articles, and continuing to grow. Now, one of the questions that comes up is how do we generate recommendations? And TrendMD is really different in this way. We look at this really differently. So we hear a lot about relatedness. In order to generate good recommendations, you need to have the most related articles. From our data, that is completely false. And what we've found actually is the best way to generate recommendations if you want to generate clicks. So if you want to generate a kind of more clicks per impression, is to rely on the data that we collect from users. So think of TrendMD almost as like a mini Amazon in that sense, where on Amazon, if someone's just purchased a teapot, Amazon doesn't recommend 5 other teapots for you to purchase, but they recommend tangentially related products that are interesting to you. Similarly, and in the same vein with TrendMD, if you just consumed an article about lung cancer, we don't recommend 5 other identical review articles about lung cancer because it doesn't really make any sense. If you want to find other review articles, you go to a search engine. So the articles that we're recommending are tangentially related based on what similar users to you have consumed in the past. And we've tested this. So it's just an hypothesis, but in one of these studies that we did, we actually looked at the difference between relatedness and what we call collaborative filtering, so using the crowd, and we looked at click-through rates over time. Because and a click-through rate, just for background, is the number of times people click on links versus the number of times they see it. So it's kind of an objective indicator of at least utility of recommendations. And we published this a couple of years ago. So in terms of why publishers use TrendMD, there's a couple main value props that we drive. So one, of course, is readership. Everything that we do is based not just on clicks, it's really readership, bringing users to your site and keeping them sticking around. The other one is citations. We have some evidence now that we influence citations, which I'll get into briefly. Building brand awareness, which is a theme, and I think we've heard before. Driving subscription revenue, especially for the closed access publishers. And more importantly as well is attracting more authors to your content, because readership is a precursor to authorship. So some of the evidence that we have to support these claims, this is a really cool study that I'm actually doing as part of my PhD, but what we found in this particular study is that we took articles, we took a group of articles and we randomized them to TrendMD and other articles where we just listed organic control. And we looked at Mendeley saves after a 4-week period, and we found that TrendMD led to a 77% increase in Mendeley saves. Now the reason why that's really significant is that amongst all the alt metrics out there, Mendeley saves are a robust correlate to future citations. So this was really nice and hard evidence that was kind of supporting that we might influence citation rates of articles through enhanced discoverability. This is another interesting aspect that came from those data where we looked at actually the depth of visitors. So if we referred a visitor to a journal, what did they do in that journal? Did they hop off, or did they stick around? And when we compare it to other referral sources to this journal, so comparing to PubMed, Google Scholar, Twitter, and Google, TrendMD had the highest depth, and that was statistically significant, which is obviously what we want to drive. In terms of targeting, one thing I'll mention here, particularly for those that are closed journals or don't offer open content, often subscriptions are based off of usage. Again, everything is based off of readership. So with TrendMD, what people can do and users can do is target your content to specific institutions. So if you're up for renewal at Stanford, let's say, you can actually make it so that your content is promoted to users with those IP addresses. So we're recommending to specific individuals. And this is just one other case study from Elsevier showing kind of a year-on-year increase in pay-per-view revenue as they were using. So in 2015, they weren't using TrendMD. In 2016, they were. And the last thing I want to mention is a really cool case study from Biomed Central, which again goes back to the whole theme of the importance of readership, showing that readership of journal content, readership of your articles, is the most robust kind of predictor of eventual authorship. That was the one reason why they were actually submitting to BMC journals in this case. So it's pretty cool. A lot of data that we collect. I don't have too much time to go into this, but and the founders. So I'm one of the founders of TrendMD, and we have other people also that have been in publishing, like Matt Coquerel, Günter Eisenbach, and my right-hand man Alan, who builds. I just talk. So to summarize, if you're going to remember anything from today's presentation, TrendMD is an audience development tool, and we are not just for medical publications. We do everything from STM and non-STM as well. And I can't take questions now, but that will come later. But thank you very much.